Hey guys, it's Christian, your Vancouver realtor, and the topic for today's video is, are wealthy parents to blame for high home prices in Canada? A very interesting article I came across in the Globe and Mail, and this is written there by their personal financial guru, Rob Carrick. Globe usually has good pieces. This one, I'm not so sure about. Let's go through some of the facts and assertions in this article together, and let's question what we're reading here. This is a great skill to have in life, by the way. You always want to be questioning what you're reading. So he basically starts, the article is called Wealth of Parents, a Deal Breaker for First-Time Home Buyers. And he starts off saying that 19% of first-time buyers are getting help from their parents. Well, what's wrong with that? I think that's a great thing to help your kids be able to buy a home, isn't it? Now, I also think that fact is wrong. It's more like 91%. Anecdotally, my own personal experience, I find 9 out of 10 of my clients is getting help from their family. Especially in a big city like Vancouver, it's probably the same in Toronto, Montreal. You're getting help from family. And that's okay. There's no shame in getting help from the family. Generally, the biggest stumbling block, the biggest bar to jump for most young people is the down payment. And parents just want to help get their kids in the market. I call it riding the escalator to wealth, right? When you're on the escalator, you don't even have to move. You just stand there and you're going up and you're becoming more wealthy because your home is increasing in value. You're paying off the principal payments to the bank, and that's how you're increasing your net worth. Now, let's go on. He says that housing is a well-off game for rich families. I don't agree with that. I think that you can't. I've worked with immigrant couples. They've come from India. They both got good educations. They did night school, saved up their down payment, and boom, 3 years later, they're buying their first 2-bedroom condo in the city. It's doable. Same situation for me. My dad used to fix air conditioning units at industrial sites, and he didn't get a lot of money for that. My mom was a hairdresser who probably held down a job no longer than 18 months. And we rented pretty much my entire life. So I'm able to turn it around to think long term, save money, buy homes. You can too, okay? It doesn't necessarily matter what kind of family you're coming from. And I think it's very important that you keep that in mind. All right, moving along. He's saying the average home price here, $660,000 across Canada. So that means for a 10% down payment, you need to have $66,000 saved. He says that's high. Is that really high? I mean, a couple who's a working professional couple, you're going to be able to save $66,000 in 3 years. You really should be able to do that. And that's not a high bar to climb. Now, he says for bigger cities like Vancouver, Toronto, the average home price is $1 million, and you need to save $200,000. Well, that is high, right? And so that's where the parents are stepping in to help the kids with that down payment money. Now, here's the thing to keep in mind. When you're buying a home, it's kind of like starting a business in many ways, right? You're going to need certain executive skills. You're going to have long-term planning, okay? You got to think about, okay, the next 3 to 5 years, we want to buy our home. You need to budget. So you and your partner, spouse, need to sit down at the kitchen table and plan out a budget. Make sure you're saving, let's say, $2,000 a month. And you're going to need to have self-discipline, self-control, not to waste that money on activities that will basically harm your long-term vision. Those kinds of executive thinking skills are needed to do well in life, to do well in business. And you're going to have to be able to use them when you're planning to buy a home, right? And I think that there's this sense of entitlement that a lot of people have. One day the light goes on, they say, hey, I want to buy a house. Okay, why can't I buy a house? House prices are too expensive. It doesn't work like that. Whether it's in life or in business, you need to be thinking a lot about what you want to do. A businessman who starts a restaurant doesn't think about it and start it the next day. He probably plans it out for a year or so. Then he needs to think about how to raise the money. That can sometimes take a couple of years. In the meantime, he's constantly fine-tuning his vision and taking action steps to raise the money and bring the people together that can help him fulfill that vision. It's really the same thing when you're buying your own house. Okay, anyway, back to this article. He says the biggest obstacle is the down payment. Well, that's true. The down payment is a big obstacle. If $200,000 is a lot of money, you probably don't have that in your bank account. I didn't either when I bought my first home. I started dreaming about it. I started writing it down so that and putting specific deadlines for myself to have that money accumulated. And funnily enough, when you write things down, magic happens. That's when somehow your mind starts to find ways, opportunities for you, and you just start to, it starts coming in. And I'll have to make a video about this at some other point. Yes, the down payment is the big obstacle, but income qualifying is also a big part of this. You know, I have had clients where the parents have quite a bit of money, but the kids aren't making enough of an income. Maybe they're working at supermarkets. They're just not, or in some cases, they're just not very motivated. And unfortunately, they cannot buy themselves a home. So income qualifying is a big piece of this. Remember, the bank is going to give you about 5 times your income. So if you were making $80,000 a year, they'll give you about $400,000 in a loan, right? The rest has to come from you in the form of a down payment. If you take night school courses, you upgrade your skills, you work overtime every week, every day perhaps, all of a sudden you may find yourself with a bigger role at your company and now you're making $120,000. Well, the bank will give you a $600,000 down payment. So right there, just by improving yourself, you can definitely get more of a loan from the bank. Keep in mind, this takes years. This doesn't happen over days or weeks. It's a continuous effort on your part to improve yourself in your career that gets you to this stage. That's people who are buying homes, that's what they're doing. All right, moving along. So he says that the average down payment has doubled in the last 5 years from about $80,000 to $190,000. I would say that's true. Anecdotally, I think most of the parents helping my clients are helping with $100,000 to $300,000. And think about it. The reason why that's happened too is in the last 5 years, what's happened is home prices have gone up in many places, in some cases have doubled. So the parents have a lot of equity in their homes. If you owned a house in Surrey in 2015 and you still own it today, you've probably doubled your equity. That home may have been $500,000, today it's worth $1 million. You can easily take out $100,000 and help your kids buy a home. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's what most parents would do. So he now goes on to quote this economist from CIBC called Ben Tall, quite respected in Canada, who's doing a study on housing and affordability issues. And the economist says, quote, "We know that a huge number of parents have been benefiting from this pandemic crisis financially," end quote. I do think that wording there is a little deceptive because when he says it like that, it sounds like rich people are just getting richer by doing nothing. I think we have to dig a little deeper there. The better way to word that is to say that those people are making smart financial decisions, and that's why they've benefited from the pandemic. So let me give you an example of what this actually looks like. I know I was talking to a client about 18 months ago, just after the pandemic hit. She had invested a lot of money into the stock market, maybe 6 figures worth. And of course, after the pandemic, the lockdown, I think the stock markets were off about 27% at their highest levels. So you put in $100,000, all of a sudden 2 weeks later, you've noticed you're missing $27,000. You panic, you sell. you don't do that. And you don't do that because when you're investing in the markets, whether it's stocks, bond indexes, which is what I do a lot of, you are doing this for the long term. You're doing this with a 20 to 30 year outlook. So you don't want to be selling when the market corrects. You will only know that if you've done your reading. You've read 2, 3, 4, 5 books on the subject. Maybe you've watched 2, 3, 4 long lecture style talks from Warren Buffett, or the universities like Stanford and Harvard. They've got this stuff online. You can learn a lot about stocks and how the financial markets and cycles work by watching this stuff on YouTube. So you would know when the market corrects, you don't sell. You hold on, you correct. I mean, I was actually buying when the market was going down. But that's only because I've done my 50, 100 hours of reading, maybe 200, 300 hours of study into this subject. Folks, that's how rich people get rich, it's not given to them. They are reading, they are learning, they are talking to other successful people and learning from them. So a little bit, I have a qualm with how that's worded. All right, continuing along. He talks a little bit about the Liberal Party now that just got reelected, minority government. They want to increase the minimum. So right now, the most that you can buy is $1 million with an insured mortgage, meaning you don't have 20% down. Liberals want to increase that to $1.25 million. In general, I think that's a really good approach by the Liberal Party. I think they just want it. They're coming from a good place. They want to help home buyers, especially in bigger markets where home prices are high. With up to 1.25 million, you could still get an insured mortgage. So in that case, let's say you could have $125,000 saved and still get that level of home. So that's a good thing. I think it helps people buy more space if they're starting a family. Now you can get a townhouse, probably not a house in a big city for that much money, but it's all right to start in a bedroom community. Out here in Vancouver, that might be a Maple Ridge, a Pitt Meadows, it's a Langley, for example. A lot of great communities. There's still only about 50-minute drive to Vancouver for work. So and that's normal. We sometimes have this, and I had this too when I was younger, this sense of entitlement that, okay, I want a house, I want it right downtown. I want it on the west side. You don't start off in life that way. Usually you start off, you buy your first home out in the burbs and you move into the downtown area. This is how our grandparents did it. This is how our parents did it. This is how I'm doing it. First home we bought it in Burnaby. Older, shared laundry, needed a full gut reno. That's how I started. It was a very, very cheap condo. And it's now gone up quite a bit in value. And that's how these things work. So don't have the expectation that I'm going to buy and live right downtown or on the west side. That's not your first home. That might be your third or fourth home. All right. And just moving along here, finally, he sort of says, look, the only options really available to buyers are small towns, living with their retired parents, or living with friends. Well, I don't know if that's necessarily true. You could start in the burbs like we talked about. But what's wrong with starting in a suburb? Nothing. And if you lived with your parents, that's fine too. I know I had a good friend in Toronto. He bought his first house and he literally rented it to ESL students. So he had 4 or 5 ESL students living with him for the first 5-10 years. At this point, he's pretty much paid off his house, but that's how he got started. And it's never easy at first, just like any other business would not be easy. So I think we have to be able to have some resilience in life. It's not just given to us. With that resilience, renting out the downstairs basement suite, for example, very common in Vancouver. You might buy a house, you rent out the basement suite, and maybe the other one too. And it helps towards your mortgage. After 5-7 years, you've paid off enough mortgage, and so you don't need to rent out those suites anymore. So those are options, things to think about. Finally, he finishes off this article, I thought, with a little bit of a whiny line here, which is that high down payment gifts perpetuate unfairness. Those who get them have small mortgages and can save more and spend more. Well, that's okay, but there's a lot of advantages to doing this yourself. I find the people who do this themselves, they tend to have more resilience, they tend to be more determined, they tend to then carry those executive skills like long-term planning, self-control, budgeting to their business as well. And they do better in their businesses. I mean, I think I'm a good example of that. People around me are a good example of that. And everybody can do this. I helped a couple working at Safeway last year buy their first home. Folks, these guys were working at Safeway. They had a dream. They had a vision. They wanted to get a foothold and ride that escalator market. Took us some time. We finally got them a home. Very simple one-bedroom condo in Surrey, far away from the SkyTrain. And guess what? Today it's already up about $70,000 in value. And so I could probably call them and tell them they've already, they're doing really well at this point. But the point is, you start somewhere, and anybody can do it. Even at the very lowest income levels, you can find a way. So always have that hope, have that optimism, think long term, have a little bit of a vision for your life, and don't be too dissuaded by articles like this in major media publications like the Globe and Mail that whine about high home prices. Talk to your parents, talk to your grandparents about the 1970s, 80s, and 90s, and they'll tell you home prices were expensive then too. It's never changed. It's always the same. So just keep that in mind, and I don't think we can really blame mom and dad for helping the kids. I think they're doing us a favor. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.